Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, offering convenient delivery and free pickup to help with the busy times this holiday. Online customers enjoy the same prices, deals, and rewards as in-store. Get started in the Safeway app or at Safeway.com.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
Do you still have gifts sitting at home destined for friends and family far away? Well, tomorrow is your last chance to send holiday mail first class through the U.S. Postal Service and have it arrive by December 25th. Miss the deadline and you can still ship Thursday or Friday, but you'll pay a little extra for Priority or Priority Express. I'm Haley May.
And I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel.
Coming up, a new report highlights problems at a state lab responsible for the safety of your food and water.
The lab has been chronically understaffed and underfunded.
Plus, it sure hasn't felt like December out there lately. Those conditions might cause power outages across the state. How you can prepare.
You'll just want to make sure things you need to be running actually can.
And which Christmas carol has Colorado's heart?
Some carols, you feel like that nice cocoa-y vibe or like gentle sleigh rides. This is much more like Game of Thrones. Winter is coming.
We dive into what makes this year's winner of the Carol Countdown so appealing.
It's Tuesday, December 16th. Here's the news in Colorado today.
Right around this time, 2 years ago, a supervisor at Colorado's public health lab realized something was off. Water quality data produced by one of the lab's chemists was filled with errors. It was the beginning of a 2-year investigation into problems at the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, or CDPHE, one that would ultimately cause the EPA to strip the lab of its certifications. CPR's Ben Marcus has been poring over the recently released investigative report and a separate analysis about why things went sideways. Ben, we had you on to talk about this last month, after the lab director had already been put on leave. But before we get into the reports, can you just remind us about what this lab does?
Sure. So the CDPHE Public Health Lab is in East Denver, Lowry. It's responsible for all kinds of things like testing food and water for safety, looking for things like mercury in fish, lead in water near elementary schools or childcare centers.
So pretty sensitive data, and I'd imagine some pretty big consequences if it's wrong. What did the report say?
So it starts back in Christmas of 2023, just after Christmas. A supervisor at the CDPHE lab discovered that one of the chemists was manipulating data, switching out failed values on quality control tests for passing values. The chemist was put on leave a few months later, but it wasn't until April that the lab's director told the EPA during a pre-scheduled audit what was going on.
That was always my plan, was that if I didn't get the go-ahead to have a formal meeting, that I was not going to allow them to come on site without having a conversation with them. And as soon as they came on site, I asked them to come to my office.
That's Emily Travanti, the former lab director, in an interview that she did with us. She describes EPA officials as surprised, in part because it took so long to report this manipulation to EPA.
So, Ben, if I'm understanding this correctly, it sounds like the state was trying to sort things out in-house for months before they let the feds in on what happened?
Right, but the rules say that you have to notify EPA pretty quickly within a 30-day window. It's not clear why there was this delay. The report, the investigation that we've obtained, says that there was an aggressive relationship between EPA and the state, though the reports don't explain exactly why that is. There was also confusion about chain of command, who needed to be alerted before alerting the federal government.
What about the failed quality control tests or the apparent breakdown in communication? Did the reports explain how either of those things happened?
So the investigation actually found that CDPHE had documented evidence that the chemist in this case had problems dating back to 2021 with data accuracy issues. But they also found that employees in the lab described a culture of fear and a reluctance to report issues at the lab. CDPHE seemed to have no crisis plan, according to the investigation, but they really tie everything back to a lack of adequate funding and staff. The report talks a lot about equipment malfunctions, aging instruments, pressure to get test results turned around more quickly. Here's Travanti again.
The lab has been chronically understaffed and underfunded.
She described a lab that is staffed with good chemists. They're trying to do the best they can, just with severely limited resources. But when CDPHE fired Emily Travanti in November, she said that leadership questioned whether she had told them about the budget issues before.
And I shared back with them probably 50 documents of here's issues that I was raising, here's requests for funding. And I was told that it was not, the urgency didn't come through.
After hearing all of this, people listening might wonder, is the water coming out of my tap safe? Should they be concerned?
So earlier this year, CDPHE said it had conducted extensive testing, retesting of manipulated results. They insist that there was never any threat to public health. So far, we haven't seen any evidence to the contrary. EPA, though, is unhappy that it took CDPHE so long to tell them about the problems at the lab. It stripped away their certifications for water, metals testing, and other testing, essentially shutting down most of the chemistry lab. Now, CDPHE is contracting with outside labs for the water testing it needs to do and referring water providers to private labs in the state.
So how does the state get out of this situation, and can they confirm that it's not going to happen again?
Well, there are efforts, they say, to address the underfunding. The Joint Budget Committee has released money to help them modernize parts of the lab facility, bring in new experts. And they say that that's partly the result of these investigations. But the investigators said that had the lab been properly funded from the start, had they responded to the data manipulation when it was first happening, they could have really contained the crisis much earlier.
CPR's Ben Marcus. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Being able to wear shorts or a t-shirt in December is perhaps both pleasant and kind of strange, but that's been our reality along the Front Range lately. Temperatures are nearly 20 degrees above average this week. It's due in part to a weak La Niña pattern and a ridge of high pressure that's hovering over the western U.S. It's pushing storms and moisture north of Colorado, leaving us dry and unseasonably warm. On top of it all, Russell Danielson, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service in Boulder, says recent storms in the high country didn't do much for fire danger.
Since it has been so warm and dry, there's not like that green up or anything. All the fuels are just so dry.
The good news is a cold front arrives Wednesday night into Thursday, making snow showers possible in higher elevations.
The Front Range Mountains, particularly the western slope, will get a few inches, kind of the 2 to 5 inch range for most locations. And then there's another little wave of snow that comes to just the mountains on Saturday. Nothing major, but anything little helps.
Still, that doesn't do much for us in the metro. It will stay relatively warm through the week, with highs peaking close to 70 degrees on Friday. And along with those very unfestive temperatures, high winds return on Wednesday, gusting as high as 75 miles per hour in the foothills. Front Range counties are expanding their fire bans to prepare.
So all the snow has melted across the plains and everything, so things are susceptible to burn. And then with the very strong winds, very warm, dry conditions, that is when we sometimes issue red flag warnings. And it looks like we might have that critical fire weather conditions on Wednesday.
Now, these fire conditions mean Xcel Energy could temporarily cut power in some areas this week to prevent downed lines from sparking in dry vegetation. CPR's Molly Cruz is reporting on how you can prepare in case of a potential outage. Hey, Molly.
Hey, Haley.
So how likely is it that Xcel will cut power on Wednesday?
Well, things can change quickly, but I would say it's pretty likely. They have already released a statement warning folks that this could be a very real possibility. And that's a big deal since they've only ever shut off power like this once before. in April of last year during another high wind event.
Okay, so with more possible high winds on the way, what are the options that Xcel has?
So the most extreme step would be what I just mentioned, what Xcel calls a public safety power shutoff. They'll turn off power to targeted areas based on risk, and the spokesperson I talked with said it's not something they take lightly. They'll consider weather, wind speeds, relative humidity, fuel moisture, and also the infrastructure they'd impact before making that call.
And there's one that's just a little less extreme, right?
Yeah, so if they decide the risk isn't quite bad enough to shut off power, the other thing they could do is implement enhanced power line safety settings. Those mean the lines are still in service, but they have some additional abilities to mitigate fire risk. They can, for example, instantly stop the flow of energy if, say, something touches the power line like a tree. But I should note that when outages happen, while these settings are active, it's because there's some kind of power line issue. And that means a crew has to go out and inspect the line in person before the power can be turned on. So these take longer to resolve.
Got it. Okay. With these outages being possible, how should people prepare?
Well, you can make a point to check in with your elderly neighbors and ensure they have a plan in case the power does go out. As far as a plan for yourself, you'll just want to make sure things you need to be running actually can, at least for as long as possible. That means getting portable chargers and making sure they're powered up and ready to go ahead of time. Xcel also recommends setting your fridge and freezer to the coldest setting in advance. That will help keep food cold for at least 4 hours in the fridge and 2 days in the freezer if the power cuts out. And here's one thing you might not think of. Practice opening your garage without the electronic motor so you can leave your house if needed.
All right, CPR's Molly Cruz. Thank you.
Thanks, Haley.
You pretty much can't step outside at this time of year without getting an earful of holiday music. From shopping malls to coffee shops to your radio dial, it's everywhere. They're the classics that you're happy to hear again and again each December, and embarrassingly, I'm a big fan of Wham's Last Christmas. On the other hand, there are those earworms that turn you into an instant Grinch. And each year, our colleagues over at CPR Classical give our listeners a chance to select one carol, one supreme carol to rule them all, chosen through round after round of voting. Caben Thomas hosted the 17th annual Carol Countdown this year. Caben, let's start with a spoiler. The winner this year was a returning champion, Carol of the Bells. Mm-hmm. Why do people like this composition so much?
Well, first off, thank you so much for your time, Arlo. It's good to be talking to you. Carol of the Bells, the thing that's interesting about that piece is that it kind of sneaks up on you. It's kind of quiet, it's almost polite, and then suddenly it's kind of doing parkour all over your brain. It's rhythmic, it's mysterious, it has drama, it has zero patience for boredom, and it feels both ancient and modern at the exact same time, which is catnip for human beings. We love that sort of duality.
I love that. Parkour on the brain.
It's true. And so, it started as a Ukrainian New Year's chant, right? That wanted to wake people up and wish them prosperity. This is a call to attention. And I think it's just an energy that hits you really in the feels, and you just cannot not pay attention to it.
I love that. So what are the other carols that always seem to get to the finals?
Oh Holy Night is really popular, and that's because it's basically emotional Olympics. It's a very, it's just this beautifully emotional piece. Then you have a piece like Silent Night.
A classic.
Right. It's absolutely classic. No matter how noisy the world gets, that song still whispers straight into your musical soul.
Okay, so how about conversely? What is a holiday tune that no one seems to like? And more specifically, why is it Little Drummer Boy?
People joke about that because, you've got this bump, this constant repeating pattern, bump, 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 right? And by the time it's hit its 47,000th cycle, folks start questioning their life choices. But I'll be honest with you, as I've gotten older, that song has become much more emotional for me. I mean, I want you to think about the words, man. This little boy, he is meeting, the Christ child, this difference maker, this world changer, right? These other people are bringing, gold and, frankincense and myrrh, right? And all he has is his little drum, and he plays it. It is so emotionally raw when you think about the words. And as I've gotten older, sometimes I've lost it. I just start weeping because it is so powerful. So, now here's the question. Will it ever win Carol Countdown? No.
So what do you think, in that same vein, what do you think the most underappreciated carol is?
For me, okay, because your carols are very personal, are they not? Hark the Herald Angels Sing. And there's a specific interpretation that is just out of this world. It's the Broadway Inspirational Voices perform it. Hark the Herald Angels sing, glory to the newborn King. And man, they do not tiptoe. This performance, it kicks the door open and it says, hope has entered the building, like Elvis. Instead of leaving the building, it entered the building. So all that Elvis energy is in the room, and you can't help but be inspired by a piece like that. And again, just like Little Drummer Boy, will it ever win? I don't think so, but I do believe that for me, it is an underrated, just an absolutely remarkable piece of music.
If you want to meet Caven in person and get a hug, he's welcoming the audience at the Colorado Symphony's Christmas Brass Concert tonight at 7 p.m. at Betcher Concert Hall. Ticket information is in our show notes. Caven Thomas is the morning host on CPR Classical and the host of this year's Carol Countdown.
You can hear the full Carol Countdown right now at cpr.org/classical. And remember, voting for 2026's Top Carol starts in 11 months. As we approach the end of the year, make sure you're following Colorado Today in your podcast app so you never miss an episode. I'm Haley May.
And I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel. This is CPR News.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, celebrating the holiday with fresh local produce, quality meats, and seasonal favorites. Shop in-store or let Safeway do the shopping this holiday season with free curbside pickup using the Safeway app.